Oh, here he is. Okay, we are about to start.
Hello, everyone.
All right.
Before we begin, I'd like to read our Franconia's land acknowledgements. Franconia Sculpture Park resides on the ancestral Dakota lands of the Wapakute in Minnesota, Makoche, along the St. Croix River, which also holds significance by the Ojibwe and other Native peoples. We recognize, support, and advocate for all Native nations and will actively center Native voices in our work. And now I will pass the virtual mic back to Sharon Loudon.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jane, and everybody at Franconia for their really hard work in putting this program together. I just want to also thank our many funders and our many supporters who fund and believe in Franconia's mission. We are very, very excited to welcome Rotem and Omri this evening and hear about their work, a little bit about their work and their life. And I just want to share with everybody what the reason for this talk is too. Not that we don't want to talk to them every day and have these talks and have an exchange every day, but I'm very excited. This is on the occasion of a wonderful exhibition at Franconia that of course I want you to go and see. And it's called Homesick, and it's at our Mardag Gallery, which is at Franconia Commons. And it opened on July 1st, and it will continue to be open until September 10th. The best days of the year to come to Franconia. And why not go and see their work, especially after hearing them this evening. So who are these wonderful people? I'm gonna give them a little bit of, give all of you a little bit of an intro about Rotem and Omri. So Rotem and Omri immigrated to the United States from Israel in 2011. They both received their master's degree in fine arts at the Department of Sculpture and Extended Media at VCU in Richmond, Virginia. Their collaborative work has been exhibited everywhere all over the country, including Locust Projects in Miami, Florida, Artist Workshops Gallery in Tel Aviv, and LIT Gallery in Chattanooga. They're also recipients of a wonderful Artiste grant, ARTIS, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in New York City, and featured artists in residence at ARC in Chattanooga. I also just want to share that they live and work in Minneapolis. And Rotem, she is a professor at the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis, the U. And so she's there sharing knowledge and sharing herself as she's going to do this evening. They're both a married couple. They have a family. They live in Minneapolis and they're with us tonight. So thank you very much for everyone being here. I want to say thank you to Rotem and Omri for being here. And I can't wait to hear about this project that you did and a little bit about your other projects. And for everyone who's listening this evening and watching us, we are going to have a Q&A afterwards. If you happen to be here with us, please feel free to put in the chat a couple of, as many questions as you want, and I'll relay them to Rotem and Omri. And then if you are just looking at this afterwards, I think you can feel free to ask questions maybe on our Facebook page, or you can send us a message, or you can perhaps write to Rotem and Omri as well. So with all of that, I now bring over to Rotem and Omri, and thank you both so much for being here. How are you feeling tonight?
Hey, we're feeling great. Very happy for this opportunity. We also wanted to thank to the amazing group at Franconia for all the work that you are all doing behind the scene. I mean, there is a lot to operate there. And we really appreciate all the work that you are doing. And thank you for Sharon for joining us today and and be with us to talk about this project that we are exhibit at Franconia. We thought actually to start with, actually by sharing with, let me just share my screen. We thought to start by sharing a little bit about our collaboration and past project. And then that will lead us into the current project that is on view at Franconia right now. So, so the first project is larval acceleration, a conversation in chunks. And this first, sorry. It's a little bit, it's taking a minute to get into Zoom and really be present here. So larval acceleration and conversation in chunk is the first project, that we did together. And we both had our solo art practice for many years, and we at some point, you know, as a couple, we thought, okay, it's by time to maybe try to collaborate. But the thing is that a minute after we thought we should, we want to try and collaborate, we also understood that none of us agreed to compromise on anything. So in the first project, we decided that it's going to be two separate, almost like a factory-like station that we operate in the space simultaneously. So my station was in the form of a magic box, and it's changed. It's a form of a magic box that basically producing a homemade balloon. And it's changed its form according to each step in the process of making balloon. And Omri station is kind of like a small mobile kitchen that produce a black soapy substance out of mainly pig fat. And then Omri, after he producing this soap, he throw it on this kind of like slippery surface, and he trying to ride on it. What that I maybe didn't mention is that we created the station in the studio, but we never tried it until we actually came to the gallery space. And in the gallery space, we activated it for 2 weeks every day. So for 2 weeks every day, we came and we basically work simultaneously together in the space. And you know, because you work for so many hours, you kind of like need to have some kind of like a radio station, you know, in the background, some kind of sound. So we created a radio station for each one of us. Omri radio station was telling about the history of sexual use of pig fat in early America during the Industrial Revolution. And my station was telling a story about the history of balloon in magic acts. And of course, the viewer cannot tell if it's right or fiction, and it doesn't matter. So here is a little bit of video from the performance. Okay, finally.
while it still thrives after the storm. The
American pioneers moved to the New World with their pig book with them. Just as olive oil, very common in the Mediterranean Sea, all types of lobsters, adult cooking, cosmetics, medicine, education. So was loud in America. The versatile virtues of pig fat were well known in Egypt, but it was a noble substitute for olive oil for Casablanca. It gave off a bad smell after a while. Perhaps surprisingly, it made for very good food. Considering food workshopping was at least partly outdoors, it added an active structure.
I will jump a little bit. All right, so the work is about the process, right? But the process as a whole is not like we are not revealing the process as a whole to the viewer, and this is actually something very important in our collaboration because our collaboration is always about our relationship and a dialogue between us and the viewer, which is very different from, for example, from my work, my personal work as an artist. The viewer is always watch us from outside, right? But in a way, we're putting our relationship on display. When a viewer is coming and see us walking in the space, there is something very intimate, actually, about it. So after we exhibit this as a performance, we also exhibited in Israel as a 2-channel video. So that's the installation view. So the second project that we did together, the title of it is Maybe a Horse. And the title suggesting, maybe a horse. The title suggesting a state of view in artwork, of experience in artwork. A little bit like children that looking at the sky, and kind of like wonder, trying to see images in the clouds, right? Maybe it's this, like some kind of like a wonder state. And if in the first project of us, we didn't agree to compromise on anything. At the second project, we asked ourselves, can 2 things or more exist at the same time, at the same place, without interrupting?
Without one overwhelming the other, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Over the space, then equally exist together.
Yeah, if they can equally exist together. So the main, the form that it's became is this kind of like a box that produce images, and the viewer looked at the images again from outside. It actually was very important to us, this position of the viewer, that as you can see, when you are sneaking into and looking at this kind of like a hall, you also, you yourself are kind of like,
So you're a voyeur.
yeah.
You're looking at something from the outside, and you're also become part of this environment. You're also being looked at.
But you are also, exactly, you are also vulnerable,
Yeah.
because someone else is looking at you. So that was something that interests us. And this box, basically everything in this box is meant to create an illusion of that you are, when you're looking at the object, you cannot tell what is really there and what is not. So for example, in this image, I think the box that you see there,
I think it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter, right? No, it's
I
right.
don't think the box is really there. I don't remember, but it's not important.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, it just became this magic box where the image is just a series of changing scenes. When one thing is kind of disappearing and another thing is emerging, and one thing is sort of transpositioning into another thing, and the space itself is altering, and there are some things that are actually physically there, some things are reflections, some things are screen projections. It was and for this project we really dug deep into like the history of illusions and magic.
And the mechanic, we was very into the mechanic of magic trick.
Yeah, and also some very archaical, very ancient sort of techniques of magic that of like reflection screens and holographic images. So to ultimately create this eclectic and mysterious space that when you look into it, it's captivating, but it's unclear exactly what you're looking at, which is that is the sensation of art, that of the state of wonder, that you're looking at something and it's unclear what you're looking at, but you can't stop looking at it. That's like where it's a kind of a sort of the state of seeing art that we wanted to express in this work.
Yeah. So this is some of the process. You can see the architecture itself is meant to create illusion. We made man-made clouds. And what I should mention that in that box, the images are changing slowly. So it's not the same, it's always change. So in this exhibition, we showed on the wall segments from the process. But again, like we show segments from the process, but again, it doesn't reveal the way we made it, right? It doesn't reveal how we made the illusion. So for example, in this image, in these images, it's look like you look at the clouds, but it's actually, it's a handmade clouds, yeah? So still, we always wanted to keep that kind of like mysterious, that it's unclear to you what you are looking at. And as we mentioned, we do thinking about this kind of like the state of the viewer, the state that we want the viewer to be when looking at our work.
I think we were trying to create, essentially it's an image producing machine that produces, that we were trying to create a machine that we sort of lost control over the images that we were creating. So like ultimately we chose certain images that look like something or look like something, but it's all everything is sort of different from what it seems. And we were also at some point just kind of looking through it with this kind of distance and the strangeness that was became like a hallmark sensation in this project because we also managed to create that detachment from ourselves as well, because it became this world unto itself.
All right,
And
that's
now
lead
we're
us
here.
to the project at Franconia right now.
Yeah. So right now at Franconia, you're if you walked into the gallery, this is pretty much what you would see there. It's a big, I think 10 by 10 foot drawing hanging in the center of the room, and a wall piece that's laid out on that was made for the back wall of the gallery. So I suppose a good entry point into this work, is there a way that I can see the other images before they appear?
Well, we can do it this way, and that's fine too. I mean,
oh, it's fine. No, do the other way. Just okay. Move. Just we'll move along. So I guess a good entry point into this work would be to speak about the title a little bit, Homesick, which has a dual meaning, and it sort of emerges pretty directly out of things that I think a lot of us were going through the pandemic. This is when the work was made. I think it was 2021, like the late pandemic, but still kind of when things were being referred to as kind of the new normal. I was trying to make sense of like how do we how do we continue with our lives through this, and the title Homesick kind of alludes to the two senses of this phrase, the literal sense, which means like you're home sick, which is a direct reference to the pandemic, and that you're confined by your illness. Usually that's what it means, but in this case also it could be confined by the illness of others, as we were all confined. And this idea of being homesick, of wanting to feel this metaphorical homesickness that is the sense of belongingness, and I think, or searching for the sense of belongingness. And I think both of these senses, the literal sense and the metaphorical sense, I think they of this the same phrase, I think they rarely coexist. They rarely have anything to do with each other. But somehow in the pandemic, they sort of came together because we were also all very confined and also kind of searching for a sense of belongingness and asking a lot of questions about our own identity. I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I certainly know from our circles that a lot of people were going through this kind of search for meaning and identity in their lives while they were being stuck at home, and their living circles became smaller and smaller and more confined. So basically, as a part of that, what happened was we had this idea in our first residency in Franconia to create this work for the outdoors, and we just moved to Minneapolis, and we thought we were very clever, and we thought we had the idea to create a public artwork in the open space out of paper. Brilliant idea. In Minnesota, like that would withstand the winter and the winds and everything in Franconia, in this open Franconia space. we came into this with a very experimental sort of approach, and we were, encouraged to do this also. I think there was kind of a mutual understanding that this is an experiment, and we're going forward with it. And we ended up, we had, because of the pandemic, the school was closed, the university was closed, and we were able to get a space that allowed us to really create this kind of giant laboratory with very few limitations on scale. And we also had a residency with what's it called? The MCB, the Center for
Book Art.
For book arts in Minneapolis, where they have a big, they have like a paper making workshops and facilities. MCBA, yeah. And so we also worked over there, and we had a lot of facility that was available to us, and a lot of open space. And we started making these giant sheets of paper that, as you see, this is one image of this workshop laboratory that we created. This was like the pool where and anytime you want to jump in and explain a little bit about the fibers or because
one of the things that I think it is important to mention is that and that's to the experimental state of mind that we were at, is that none of us knew how to produce paper. We never did it before. And it's something that we wanted, like we wanted to explore and try something, like try this kind of like idea of creating this material that will allow us to put a paper outdoor. Yeah, so all of this is like us learning also how to make the right paper using a fiber that will be strong enough, but at the same time thin as origami paper. And
we did a lot of research into the craft of like, what type of papers are the most durable, what type of fibers are the most durable.
Yeah, like people who is interested in like know about like fiber, I would just say that we use eventually like half kozo and half abaca. So we will get this kind of like thin paper and smooth one, but also strong.
Yeah, it's very important to us also that it will look and feel like paper, and not like, some of the crafted paper that looks, that is more of like a sculpted paper, or has like a texture. We really want to create a flat, almost like if we could create the printing paper, I think that would be
the more cheap
idea,
one.
like that, like something. But we had to also, again, because we wanted to ultimately possibly exhibit this outdoors, we needed it to be strong and durable. So we did a lot of work and research into understanding exactly the type of fibers and the type of techniques that we needed to use. And one of the things was that we discovered, like they do with the like parchment papers, or they do with the different types of papers, they impregnate them with a certain resin or a certain oil to make them more durable. So this, you can see here, this is a before and after state of this. Was like, so these are the smaller sheets on your left side. You see the smaller sheets that we stuck them together, and this is what it looked like as a single sheet of paper in the end. And then we had these this resin and oil.
Basically creating our own recipe that made out of oil, tang oil, and pine resin.
Natural pine resin. That was, it took a long time to make actually, because resin and oil, they take a very long time to sort of blend into each other and create like a homogeneous mixture. But eventually we figured that out as well, and we were able to impregnate the paper. And this is what this was the product that we ended up with. And we were kind of like, again, the sense in like the pandemic, when it was unclear. We sort of let the process completely govern us, completely take over. We surrendered to it. We felt, we were factory workers in that sense, in a paper making factory. And although this was a factory that we created and we had some kind of idea, that was the propelling force or the beginning force that set the thing in motion. It wasn't long before we had really no clue how this thing was actually going to behave and if it was even possible to do what we wanted to do with it. But we kept going because we were somehow really, we were very fascinated with the process, and we discovered that this material that we're creating, it actually has qualities that maybe we didn't expect, but we like, and we want to be able to do something with it, just really not sure what we can do with it. But it was very pale and very, very blank and pale, and we were looking at it and trying to figure out what we're going to do with this. So we also try to experiment with folding it in certain ways.
We basically, at some point, like we, as you are saying it, I was just kind of like echoing it, that at some point, like we just realized that the process will lead us and we are not in control anymore. And in a way, it's really was similar to the overall feeling during the pandemic, that it's something that is bigger than you and you let it be, you are part of it.
It was a very allegorical project in relation to the situation of the world at the time. Wasn't intentionally like that, but the art process is I think it's very, it has a deep connection to the subconscious and to things that you're going through. And sometimes it just reveals things to you that you can't really anticipate. And in this project, it was very, very, very clear that that's what was happening, that we were, we basically created a monster, and now we needed to figure out how we are going to deal with this monster. And so we ended up, looking at this blank piece of paper. We tried to hang it in Franconia. I think it lasted one night, and then it got a beating from the elements and tore and got some scars. And these are all like, these are totally battle scars, the tears and the tear and wear that the thing suffered over the time that we've been, trying to figure out that, some processes are fluid and organic, and they just, they're kind of symbiotic and they work.
This was a battle.
This was a war. This was a war. And we came out dirty and bruised and banged up, both us and the work and the piece. But we did want to kind of leave it as, we felt to do it really justice, we need to kind of really find a way to do something to this paper that will put our mark on it, but also we can't seal it. We can't, keep the qualities that it has. And so we just decided to make a drawing that is basically an architectural floor plan of the way that we remember our spaces that we were born in. The houses that both of us were born in is combined into a single house. We stuck, there's some small collages there of like immigration tickets from airports and that sort of thing. It's basically like a story, very, very rough, very kind of dreamlike, open-edged story about our
life without, memories of our life before.
Our life before and our life together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our immigration story, the set of pliers in the back. So it's also one of the ideas was to make this hanging drawing, so it's double-sided drawing, so that both sides of the paper are being used, and somehow they work together. And the way the light goes through it, almost becoming like this landscape, or this, it kind of changes with the light. And I think the pliers is what is something that came out of a memory. Yeah. It's just
in a way,
like
it doesn't, again, like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't.
It's just fragmentation, almost like a dream, basically a dream like fragmentation of images that, you know, that are symbolic in a very personal sense. And again, like with the rest of our work, it's something that you're looking at that is also very intimate. It does not necessarily communicate well to the rest of the world, but it's our kind of share. No, we don't even understand completely the meaning of it. So in the same way that you wake up from a dream and you have very vivid, clear images in your head and recollections of what happened, but you have no idea what it means and no idea what to make of it. But these set of pliers were running around chasing each other in your dream, and you know, and you feel like, oh, that plier is from my childhood, and I don't remember what I did with it, but I remember it there. I know exactly which plier it is. You know, it's kind of like again the state of seeing something that is in one way, you know, giving you the sense of, oh, there is something here, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself easily to interpretation. And I think that's part of the story of our work in general, is that it's very much about the dialogue between us, and it's an ongoing dialogue. It's something that continues to evolve, and we don't always understand it. Doing this work is in many ways a way to make sense of like how we think about visual art together and how we experience things together. And and then this back wall, do you want to?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we wanted to give, I want to see what is the other image that's also, so like we wanted to give this kind of like feeling in the space. Now I'm going back to the gallery space at Franconia, and the image and this kind of like a gate on the wall that made out of the pliers, and it's looked like a accordion
like
gate.
A scissor gate.
Scissor, sorry, it's scissor.
Expansion gate.
A scissor gates. Everything in the space is kind of like trying to create a form of a place or to define a place or a space, but it's the minute it's trying to define it, it's losing connect to it, right? Like the images, for example, on the wall, right? It's the negative space. Like the positive always become the negative space. The paper, there is a drawing on the paper, but the paper itself is transparent. The drawing itself is like are kind of like just a frame to somewhere else. We try to create this kind of like sense in the space of something that you're trying to catch, but you are not. The minute you think you catch it, it dissolves. It dissolves, exactly. Disappears. This kind of feeling that was very essential. It's felt all the time in this project, and it was very essential to keep that kind of feeling also to the viewer.
I think it's a good time to open it up.
I think it's
Sharon.
And I also think it's the last image. Yeah. All right, thank you. So I will stop share, and we would love to open it for questions. Sharon, if you have any question.
Oh, I have a lot. Thank you for that presentation. That was really wonderful. I want to go to the piece first, just to talk about like the big paper piece. Was that the same piece that you had at Franconia outside, or is it different?
It was out there for one night. There were 3, I think, that were out there in a different type of arrangement, an attempt to just 2. It was one of the 2 that was out there,
Okay, that piece, it's so interesting because I have a bunch of questions about some things that of your other performances too, but of this, you know, you kept saying, referring to these as a process, but also between both of you, right? This is these intimacies between both of you. I want to ask, is it is, how does it evolve from you? Why do you want to show it? Like the big capital A for art, right? An exhibition. What's the reason for showing that? And it has nothing to do with a viewer getting it or not. That's not what I'm saying. It's saying that how does it evolve from you and leave you when it's so intimate to really what your processes are in a recording of you?
You're asking how do we decide when this private thing can become public?
Yeah, how does it evolve from you? Like, what is the difference between just the recording of these processes, right? And the moments of tracking your history to then making it public into its own entity?
Again,
I think you can.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think both of us, I don't think we're interested in, it's just, it's not something that I think we are interested in, like presenting the process as a documentation. Yeah, because I personally will say that I believe that objects tell stories, and being coexist with this object in the space, whether you know the story or not, you feel something to it. I mean, you know, like even you ask the questions of like, why is it tearing? You know, it's telling, like objects have the ability to tell story. And also, I would also say that like in this specific paper piece, there is quality to the paper. And this is something that I think it was important for both of us to exhibit it. Like, even if it's not outside, it was clear to us that there is some quality to the material that we created. And we want others to experience it, even if we do not know how to answer all the questions to this piece. I actually think for me, it's always exciting when the piece also, you know, I still have questions about things that I created. But when you are in front of it, you know, some of my friends told me that it's looked like a hide. It's not actually look like a paper, but it's clearly not a hide. So it's bringing more questions than answers. And ultimately, I think this is a place that we are very interested for the viewer to be.
Yes, but also like in the context of when we decide that we have something that we want to do together, it's usually you know, something that that we don't necessarily, either of us, fully understand on our own. And the process of making it is also the process of trying to understand what this thing is. And we just have sometimes a very, it can come from either of us, like maybe a horse piece that came from a sketch that I made, I think, for something, a very sort of idea that got shelved, like, you know, a long time before. And then, you know, I opened it back up and I started talking to Rotem about it. And, you know, she started developing her own interest in it. And I was really not sure where that idea was going until it became something that we were doing together. And then it's very much about relinquishing the sense of authorship. It's very much about letting go, understanding that this is, you know, I think in the talk we did in Chattanooga, somebody was really insisting on asking us, like, so who did what? And we were very like, nobody did anything. We both made this work. That's how this came to be, is because these pieces can only evolve out of a conversation. These pieces can only be developed out of a conversation. And I think at the end of the day, that is what we think is interesting to the public is to actually show something that is a product of a dialogue. It's not a product of a single mind that kind of, you know, that is obsessed with its own kind of, am I doing this is how it needs to be done. It's very much, we get into fights actually on the door of our studio. There's a sign saying, if you hear a couple fighting, it's work in progress.
Yes.
You know, and we very much believe in the power of persuasion, and it's about the work. It's not about what I want. If Rotem has an idea that I know, like there's a moment where you say, you know, I never would have thought to do that, but you're right, this is what needs to be done, you know, and it's about looking at the work and trying to understand what is the next step together, you know. And when we both agree on something, that's when we take the next step, and it doesn't happen often.
So I want to ask you too, thank you for all that. That's really, really good and great to understand. Now, that piece is not new. It was outside. Is that piece that was behind it? Because this gallery space was meant to be for you a new context and consideration. So what made you decide to put, I'm assuming that piece where you were examining these wrenches or pliers, and then the lack of closure, that's the new part. What made you put both of them together in a context? Was that paper piece a way to show preservation or stop in time, and then the new piece? What was the discord between both of them, and especially because they were made at different times?
So well, when we came to exhibit the piece, I should say that the paper piece was hanging in our studio for a very long time. That is a way to keep it safe, to you know, to secure the piece. And also, as we said, it was a mystery to us. It was completely clear to us. So it was for a very long time there in the studio, in the background of other things that we did. And when we came to do the exhibition, the indoor exhibition, we revisit it and rethink about it. And the work piece is, from one hand, it's new. On the other hand, it's not new, because when we did this process, one of the things that we developed are different kind of patterns. We were started to think about like patterns and drawing that will be made on the paper, and we design all different kind of pattern that came from segments of our life before we met. And the plier was one of those kind of like one of the version. And I think like making the piece on the wall, it was, I think it was kind of like a mark to do some kind of mark in the space and make the space, give the space a feeling that is less a gallery space feeling, like something that is related maybe to a home decoration. Again, like yes and no, right? Like it's not exactly a home decoration, but thinking about like how, you know, when you put a color, when you paint the wall, right? You paint it in a color that you like, and it's make it your own. So
I think there's also the color, the actual paint is made of like a
it's an indigo
indigo pigment. And so it's another attempt to kind of bring into the space something that has some meaning for us, has some relationship to our, like there's wine in there, but you know, something that kind of comes from a private space. And again, you know, I think the entire story of this piece is this attempt to create a space and yet at the same time somehow leave it empty. And and somehow that wall piece was another attempt to maybe take over the gallery space and and maybe create some depth into it, or create some layering in the space.
I totally get it. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, Omri.
Sure, yeah. Definitely.
But go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted again.
I did as well, and I interrupted you back.
Please, we love interruption.
Go ahead.
But I was going to say that so interesting, because what I was talking about, looking at in my head, I was thinking that repetition and exactly what you were talking about, patterns, and that is actually, patterns are also a form of tracking identity, right? And it's also utilitarian, which is hugely a form of identity. But in addition to that, when you did the piece with your first piece together, but they were separate pieces, right? And it's really interesting, because I wrote down there are different forms of labor. One, like Omri, you were grinding that pig fat, but how it happened was much more physical, and what came out was faster and had texture. And then Rotem, you had this beautiful sort of, I'm just going to say, like glazing or dipping, that pulling out of it was very, very elegant and slow. And so those two things happening together at once, there was like this intimacy and then creating pattern in a way because of that repetition. And then also I have all these notes, sorry. Also the way in which, like, the labor part of Omri actually physically riding that box as he left, and forgive me, I don't know what to call that, and I don't need to, I'm just describing. And then actually, Rotem, you were pushing it. So like these two dynamic processes, and then in the work that you're showing in that back piece, maybe tracking both of those abstract narratives that are a result of identity and mapping. Would you say that that's probably right?
Yeah, I think, I like the idea of mapping. I think that's something that we both kind of dealt with in different ways, but it's not, perhaps maybe in this last drawing, it's where it comes out the most, it's the most, visceral kind of present sense of mapping and mapping. And I think, there's something about our story together that we've traveled a lot together, and how we experience this travel is also very different, but it's always been sort of parallel. And I guess in a way, that piece that you're talking about also shows like how we kind of experience that movement, that motion forward. But I mean, there's a lot of
I want to talk about the repetition, because the repetition is super important. Yeah. And I think the repetition, it's much more present, that it's embedded in the process, because making those paper is like to making the same thing again and again and again and again and again. And yeah, you see it in the flyer, that repeating again and again and again. And something about the repetition, for me, it's like, it's like a couple that like fighting again and again, or like having this kind of like conversation and trying to figure things out together, but you're kind of like coming back. Like this kind of like repeating something is like to figure something out, right? Like there is something about I'm trying to figure something out. So I will do it until I will figure it out. But then this process is the same, like you searching for that, this kind of like search became the work, right? You are not going.
It becomes the volume itself.
That's what defines
like,
that you are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, like almost like a knitting process that you
yeah.
same thing, but you're not. You're kind of searching for something, but
in a way, you know that you will never.
Yeah. Maybe we'll never find it.
Well, I think it's also like persistence, and I also think that artists are much more than makers, right? Yes, objects come and they come out of things naturally, even as we live as humans, whether we're making something for us to eat or something to wear or something to hold or use. There's a context to objects that are chosen and that create a foundation for living. So both of you already have that tremendous foundation within your relationship, clearly. And I wanted to share too, Rotem, in a conversation we had recently, you mentioned that your work is influenced by relationships, and that actually craft, if you will, is something that's important to you. I think that's in both of your work in a lot of ways, but also in the thinking before the object, in a sense. How would you respond to that thought and that kind of just observation from me?
Well, I work with Omri sometimes, but I also I work by myself as an artist, and we bring when we work together, we bring to the table the thing that interests us.
But you've always been very collaborative person. Like
I always work.
You've always looked for influences that were kind of that emerged from conversations with people, or that
totally. But what did I wanted to say about, like, in relation to craft and making is that I think that like creating objects is a very intimate.
Yes.
It's a very intimate relation that you have with whoever is there, right? Like if you work with people, but for me, it's also when you work with material. And that's the reason I pick also in my personal project, or like a project that is not necessarily our collaboration. I very much think about the material I'm using because I think that the material have something to say, and you have a reaction to it, that it's not necessarily a logical reaction.
Right.
So, so one of the aspects that we didn't talk about in this work, maybe, or I don't know, it's that, it's all natural material. Like there is the natural fiber, and we are very well aware of where they came from, or the paint on the wall is made, as Omri mentioned, from white wine and indigo, and craft or crafter, or someone who is dedicate their life to a certain product, know very well the material or and the product, that very well the process. Very different from us, by the way. Yeah. Because we, as an artist, we actually we take this place of being amateur, and actually we do see quality in being an amateur in what we're doing, like doing something for the first time. Sorry.
That as well, but not only that, we define the goal of this object. right? We don't have, and it circles back to your first question, like why is this worth showing people? And that's always like, as opposed, well, the first question were like, why? No, I understand.
Worth, that's, no, of course, I'm saying you as artists
decide that this is for other people to see.
Yes, like sharing that experience, because there is a line between when you cross intimacy, and for every artist, like no matter what they're doing, they hold on to that truth or not.
For me, that question also translates into expands into the question of worth, like, and why am I doing this in the first place? You know, why is there something here that needs to be, that I feel needs to be shown, or that we're doing together, and that you know, as opposed to when you're creating some kind of utilitarian craft, or in the life of other types of objects, I think they already exist within a certain context. And for the art process is kind of, you have to also contextualize it. You also have to make sense of it for yourself as you are working through it. And I think this is where the question of, this is where it's interesting, where the objects sort of emerge out of this conversation and this relationship. And I think that has a lot to do with what validates this process, for me at least, is the fact that it comes out of a dialogue. In fact, this is for me was a deciding moment where I decided that I actually did not want to make art by myself anymore. And that I was only going to do, like, I was only going to work in collaboration. Because I think that is an essential part of what validates this and gives context to these objects that end up, you know, appearing in the world and taking up a lot of space. And you know, it's always been a struggle for me. Like you make something very big, you end up having to carry it, and you think, why the hell did I make this thing? Now I can't lift it. You know, it's always been this paradox. And so I think that circles back again to that issue of relationships, of working, of these objects being sort of you know, a manifestation of a dialogue, of a conversation between two people who are trying to understand something. I think that makes that process very meaningful for me.
Well, what's sad about this evening is we have to end soon. And that's very sad, because I have a whole list of questions here, and I would love to have the opportunity to continue this conversation with you both. But I would also welcome everyone to come to the gallery and experience what you just shared. And if you both are open, I would encourage them to write you through your website and to just be able to have that discourse that can continue. Because essentially what you're doing is you're welcoming in a generous way, a public to experience what you have over time, and from the past, bringing it forward too. And it was interesting too, Rotem, when you said that Pliers piece was like a gate, and a gate, some people may say that it's something that you can't pass through, but I think it's something that you both have made together like this. So I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity, thanks to Jane and to Sarah and everybody at Franconia, to have this experience, to experience your work, but also talk with you. I love your energy, and you can feel it bubbling between you. And I'm just curious, as we leave here, what are you working on now?
Omri is
I make bread, as usual.
Oh my God, you brought it up.
I brought it up, and you said you were not going to, which I respect. So, but you did ask, what am I doing now? So I have to say it. But I think, and Rotem, as said, she also has a solo career, and she does continue to do art by herself, as opposed to me.
But not really by myself. That's true.
Right.
Like I always work with people, like with amazing
So it's very organic, and you know, if the next thing comes along, I think we had this series of carpets that we were talking about before. Maybe that will bear fruit in the
that's working very well with my personal interest in
those patterns.
Traditional woman craft.
That is, we developed a couple of patterns in the process of this work. A couple of patterns that we developed together. That some of them became like silk screen prints, and we were thinking of that. Maybe that would be the next thread that's would maybe lead somewhere else with our
no pun intended thread, no pun intended. But I do want to say though that when you say Rotem women's work, right, you're saying, I just want to say for the public that people identify as women in the past, right, that had taken on in history a lot of textiles.
What did I really mean? It's I now do research about women in my family, like fourth generation back. That they 4 generations back, they lived in Iraq, and they migrated, and I specifically searching for objects that women in my family made.
Wonderful.
And so that's what I meant. Like it was a very specific, actually, thing that I didn't get the chance to mention. Okay. Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah,
I think that's wonderful. I mean, I can imagine some of us sitting on your rug that both of you may make and eating the bread that Omri has made.
Sharon, maybe you need to come and collaborate with us.
I would love to eat the bread. So with that, I would love to
happening is that there will be a lot of breadcrumbs on the rush. We'll be very uncomfortable.
All right, enough.
Thank you both so much. I would really emphasize and share with everyone to please, and I'll go on the Facebook website, page for Franconia and put up your websites. And if you don't mind, Omri, I will put a link to your bakery, if you don't mind too. Very good. It's such a pleasure. I can't wait to see you. Everybody listening, also September 23rd is our next big event. And Omri and Rotem's show will close on the 10th. So you need to come twice. You need to come between now and September 10th. And then also, I hope to see you both on September 23rd. We're going to have an artist, and we're just going to, a lot of artists and a lot of alumni and a lot of people come for this incredibly diverse and fantastic event. And you can read more about it on our website. Art and Artist Celebration. That's right. Thank you, Jane. I'm a little talked out. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both so much, and I look forward to seeing you in person and continuing this conversation.
In touch when you're in town.
Yes, please.
Will do. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.